In this second video, we will talk about other strategies that can be implemented to help children with ADHD at school. So, with attentional difficulties, there may also be some slowness in completing certain tasks. So we sometimes recommend giving these children more time. Since some children may need breaks, this will also increase the time to take to complete a task. Children with ADHD also often have significant organizational and planning difficulties. So these difficulties are especially noticeable in the part of the life of the child where he or she will be asked to be more independent in learning. It's important to understand that for these children, explicit learning will be necessary. So it will be necessary to explain and show them methods for organizing and planning their tasks. So for example, you can explain to them how to use their agenda, saying, well, you have an assessment on Thursday, so you will have to study on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Checklists and to-do lists are also very useful because we know that these children tend to have difficulties in working memory, which will make them forget a lot. So we notice, in fact, that these children can be very forgetful, for example, when it comes to school material. So some people advise, for example, to have a single binder where all the material that the child needs will be kept with dividers. If, for example, the child also tends to always forget his or her pencil case, it's also possible to consider having double the number of material at school and at home. I really think that a dialogue between the school and the parents should also be taking place on a regular and clear basis. For example, around homeworks. Some current computer systems, for example, allow parents to better help their children because they are now aware of the homework to be done. A main point I would like to make is about inhibition difficulties, which are often shown in impulsivity and a tendency to rush through activities. And that can be a real challenge for those involved around the child. For example, a child will rush to answer a question, cut off speech, stand up without permission. And it's very important to understand that these behaviors are symptoms that are still difficult to manage at that age, but they're not a desire to harm. However, it's important to still be able to keep a stable and predictable framework for these children and not to change it too much when faced to negotiations that may take place during these moments of tension. Impulsivity symptoms also tend to increase with fatigue, so breaks can be offered to the child when he or she seems very dissipated. This will also allow teachers and parents to regulate themselves when they see that their patience is running out. As these children are very sensitive to injustice and differences in treatment, we recommend creating a clear and fair framework that can be discussed at the beginning of the school year, for example. So, if we now come to hyperactivity difficulties, we often recommend teachers to designate the child with ADHD to perform a physical activity. So, for example, to take material from another class to another, to distribute sheets to all children, or just an activity that requires more physical effort. This has already been mentioned during this MOOC, but obviously practicing a sport is highly recommended for these children who have a hyperactivity, because in addition to helping them decrease motor agitation, it will also strengthen their self-esteem. And indeed, these children often have self-esteem difficulties related to this disorder because they are aware, of course, of the difficulties that they have, and they tend to compare themselves to others. So do not hesitate to encourage them, to congratulate them in their school performance, but also in their behaviors. As we said many times, positive reinforcement really can be the key when working with ADHD. Even though ADHD can explain many signs in a child, it's still important not to label the child and not to confine the child to this disorder. In my practice as a psychologist, I'm often surprised by the ideas of children, their families, and teachers who continuously find new solutions to difficulties caused by ADHD. Finding solutions by working together and being creative is still, to my idea, the best way to live with this disorder. It also gives the child the feeling of being understood and supported in difficulties that are not always his or her fault. So really allow yourself to be creative and test your ideas directly in the field.